The 12th season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Saturday at 6 p.m.
Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news. Once again, from the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha, here is your host, Kathy Wyatt.
It's a road trip across Nebraska like no other. Check this out. Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, the state's vacation possibilities. Here to provide us with a guided tour are Sarah Baker, Media Relations for the Nebraska Division of Travel and Tourism, and photographer Rick Nibel. Thanks so much to both of you for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sarah, before we get too far into this, tell us the Nebraska Division of Travel and Tourism, exactly what that is and what your role is with them.
Well, the Nebraska Division of Travel and Tourism falls under the Nebraska Department of Economic Development, so that's what we're part of. And we have a staff of about 10 people. Everybody kind of does a different job, promoting different areas of the state, working with, businesses across the state, tourism-related businesses to grow their business, develop new attractions, working with existing attractions. And my job specifically, I do public relations for the division. So I work with all types of media, photographers, shows like this. So.
Okay. How'd you become involved in this?
Well, I'm a Nebraska native and went to school at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, and have a background in journalism, love to travel. So it seemed like a good fit, and I wanted to, since I was going to come back to my home state and live here, I wanted to do something that I felt would benefit my state, and this seemed like a good thing to do. So
wonderful, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, and Rick, what about your role?
I'm a photographer for Snitley Carr, which is the advertising agency for travel and tourism, and we've been working with travel and tourism for about 9 or 10 years, I believe, and I've been there since 2005, and one of my main roles is to take photos across the state for this purpose.
And how did you get involved in photography then?
I've been doing this for about 30 years, most of which was freelance before joining Snitley Carr, but this opportunity came up and it seemed like a good fit for me and for this point in my career, so I jumped at it.
Okay, and what drew you to that profession, just curiously?
Oh, a variety of things. I actually have a couple of degrees in something entirely unrelated, but it seemed like the sort of creative outlet that I really wanted at that time. And away from a desk, a lot of variety on a daily basis. You never know what your day is going to be like, so it just seemed like an interesting way to make a living.
Okay, and I have to ask, favorite photograph of all time that you've ever taken?
Of all time? Wow, that's a tough one. Possibly I used to live in Philadelphia shooting at the Penn Relays, and I just happened to get this wonderful shot of a wheelchair athlete. It's hard to describe, but there are shadows on the field of spectators in the stands that sort of mimic the shadow of the wheelchair athlete on the track, and that's one of my favorites.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
And Sarah, we have a map of Nebraska.
Okay.
And one of the things that we wanted to do before we got too far into all of this was just put the map up for folks so they can reference it and have you kind of walk us through it as though we were calling to inquire about something.
Okay. Well, I guess, we at the division and for, travelers both in and outside of Nebraska, we sort of divide the state into 7 different regions, and of course they aren't identified on this map, but they're sort of self-explanatory. Of course you've got the metro region, which includes Lincoln, Omaha, and surrounding areas. Then you have sort of the northeast area, and then the southeast area, and then you sort of move into central Nebraska. So we sort of divide it by the Sandhills region, which is sort of right there from the northern border down to kind of like right in the center, maybe around where you can see Broken Bow, and then so that's sort of the Sandhills region, and then below that south central Nebraska, and then we have 2 other regions, which would be the Panhandle region, and then there's one more region that's sort of like down in the south west corner of the state. So those are kind of how we divide. It's a little bit geographical when you think about the Panhandle and the Sandhills. We use those areas to define it, but the rest of it's just sort of like simply just using directions. So if somebody were to reference the information that we put out, that's how we divide it. And each of those areas really does have its own distinct personality as far as things to do, history, different types of attractions that relate to the area of the state. So that's kind of how we do it.
Okay, and I have to ask then, if each region has its own personality, curiously, how would you describe each region then if you had to sum it up in one sentence?
Well, it's hard. I mean, Nebraska is such a very diverse state. I mean, we have a large amount of land and a lot to do within those areas. So, I mean, I'll just, I guess, take one area, for instance, like if you were to describe, the Sandhills region, that region is primarily, it's used for ranching, and it's all sort of green and rolling hills, and it's, Highway 2 runs right through that region, which is one of our 9 scenic byways. So, I mean, that would sort of be in a nutshell how you could describe the Sandhills, but you can describe each region sort of that way, maybe in 1 or 2 sentences, but they are all very diverse and different.
Which region are most people drawn to and why?
I don't think there's one region that any 2 people are going to be drawn to for the same reasons. It's really a personal thing. Like if you like to hike and bike, then you might enjoy the Sandhills or the Panhandle. But if you like to shop, then you might really want to go to the metro area of the state. If you're interested in history, you might want to go to the northeastern area where the Lewis and Clark, is tied in. So it's really sort of a personal choice of where people choose to travel.
Okay, and as someone who is responsible for public relations and marketing, I mean, this is a pretty big job.
It's a really big state. I mean, there's a lot to promote.
And how much of it, and Rick's going to be showing us some photographs in just a little bit here, but how much of it have you actually been able to see so that you can kind of talk firsthand when individuals are calling you and inquiring?
Well, a lot of my job is travel. I travel around the state for usually a few weeks each summer, checking out new attractions, doing things I haven't done before, and I by no means have done everything, but I have, traveled all across the state, been to every region, stayed there, met the people, done the most popular things to do there. So through that experience, it really makes my job a lot easier because I can just tell someone, this is a great area to hike in the Panhandle region because I've done it. So that personal part of it is a big part of what I do.
Yeah, not a bad job really to get paid to travel to all of these places that Rick is going to be talking with us about. Do you have a favorite spot?
I actually have a lot of favorite spots. Before I had this job, I hadn't traveled Nebraska super extensively. So I think the spot that I was first really drawn in by was when I first visited the Panhandle region of the state. I really had no grasp of what it was going to be like, and when I got there I was just blown away. And I tell people all the time, especially people who live in Omaha and Lincoln who haven't really traveled out that way like I hadn't, the scenery is beautiful, there's lots of things to do, it's super affordable. I mean, just there's so many reasons to go explore that area of the state. And the Sandhills blew me away too, the beauty, just the sort of serenity in that area. I thought it was really lovely. So I've had a lot of great experiences traveling in Nebraska.
Okay, most unique location.
Well, the picture we saw of Carhenge at the beginning of the show, that's probably one of Nebraska's most unique attractions, one that I get calls about constantly. People want to know about it. They want to feature it in the, quirky things of the United States. I think it gets a lot of attention for that. So I would say that probably could be one of the most unique or singular things that no other states have.
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
and we did put it back up here so that our viewers can take another look
and
at
for
that.
those who haven't been to it, I mean, it's basically a replica of Stonehenge in England, except made out of cars. And oddly, every time I've been there, it always seems to have sort of like an ethereal feeling to it. I don't know if you feel that same way about it, Rick, but I always feel as though it's something about it, just it's unexpected.
It's absolutely unexpected.
Yeah.
Now, did you take this shot?
Yes,
Rick?
all the photos we'll be looking at, I'll check, yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, and before we leave talking with you to get to the photographs with Rick, most memorable?
I think I mean, these are just personal things that I did, but, one place that I really enjoy going to is Red Cloud, Nebraska. Willa Cather was born there, and there's a history of her life there, and I love reading and authors. I'm just kind of into that. So that's one place I really enjoy. It's like a charming little town, and the Willa Cather Memorial Prairie is there, which is, they've worked for a number of years to restore this to what the prairie would have been like in Nebraska when Cather lived there, first came there. So it's sort of a slice of history, but it's also tied in with nature, and I really like that. So that's one place I really enjoy. And again, I mean, I'll go back to my experience in the Panhandle as one that I really remember doing all sorts of hiking and biking. And there's a place in right on the very edge of the state called Toadstool Park, which a lot of people haven't heard of. I don't know if Rick's got an image of it for us today.
Unfortunately not, but I was thinking that,
Yeah.
talking about the diversity of the state, that's something that no one would ever expect to be Nebraska.
Right.
You show them a photo and that can't be
They
Nebraska.
can't believe it. It looks literally sort of like the surface of the moon. There's rock formations, and you can do a 1 mile or a 3 mile hike out there. And it was on the cover of our Nebraska travel guide last year, and people were just amazed by it. They had no idea it was even there. So telling people and showing people things like that in Nebraska is one of my favorite parts of the job.
So that's kind of a best kept secret.
Kind of, yeah. That would
location,
definitely
so-
qualify into something that hardly anyone knows about.
Well, not anymore.
Right, now people know, yeah. Well, after it was on the cover of the travel guide,
Yeah.
a lot more people knew about it, and
That's
they,
good.
went and visited it and took it in for how cool it is. So
Now let's talk a little bit about family. Best place for you that you can think of if people have young children.
well, one thing about Nebraska is that it is family friendly no matter where you go. So if the parents have a certain interest of something that they like to do, chances are there's a place that they can do that, either with their kids or they can bring their kids, and there's something there for their kids to do. The Henry Dorley Zoo is our top attraction in the state, and that's of course like a wonderful place to take your family in the eastern part of the state. But all sorts of outdoor activities. We are very ahead of the curve on this sort of ag ecotourism. It's a trend where people who are in the agricultural business have taken part of their business and turned it into a tourist attraction. So, for instance, you can go stay at a guest ranch and you can do what they do on the ranch as your vacation if that's what you choose to do. Or you can rent kayaks or canoes or go horseback riding, and it's all within a lot of these guest ranches, which are in the sort of Sand Hills, Panhandle, central western parts of the state. So if you like those types of things, those are really family friendly.
Okay, very good. Which leads me into the final one for you, and that is for those history buffs out there. And
Right.
I would say older adults, but boy, there are some young folks who really like
Sure.
history as well. So where are they going to go?
Well, I mentioned the Lewis and Clark region, and that's just an area that's, steeped in history. If they want to go out and sort of experience, the culture of the Old West and the history of that, there's lots of places you can do that in Nebraska. North Platte, Nebraska, of course, is a good place to do that. And then there's Fort Robinson out in the Panhandle. You can go there and experience, military history if that's what you're interested in. There's forts all over the state where you can do that. So if you like history, you can find a lot of it in Nebraska. And then, I failed to mention the pioneer history in Nebraska, which, Oregon Trail, Chimney Rock, we've got all those things. So
Okay, wonderful.
And
And Rick, you did pick 12
Yes, I did.
of your favorite photographs.
Right.
How many pictures have you taken across the state? Could you even throw out a figure?
Tens of thousands. Wow. So it was a little bit of a chore to narrow it down to 12. But
I was going to say that probably took a little bit of time. For
yeah,
you to
well,
do.
I'm on the road. I probably put 8,000 to 10,000 miles on the company van every summer. So I've a lot of these places I'm going back to the second or the third or more times. So you're always trying to find a different perspective, a different feel, to kind of capture the whole feeling of that area.
Well, let's take a look at, and I'm very successfully done, by the way. You were in capturing these particular images. We're going to go ahead and put them up in alphabetical order.
Okay.
So if you want to start with this first one.
Sure. These are airboats on Fremont Lake. And interestingly, I was told, and I can't confirm this, we could check Wikipedia, but I'm told that Nebraska is the state with the most registered airboats in the country. Who would have thought that? But that's what I'm told. And so you can rent these boats and go out for these rides up and down Fremont Lakes, and it's quite an experience that you wouldn't expect in Nebraska.
Okay, and the next one?
Obviously, the rodeo culture is large and growing in Nebraska, and this was actually at Callaway, but I particularly like this shot because it kind of gives the small town, you know, these guys are out up to no good kind of feel, and just kind of captured the low-key feeling of a small town rodeo, I thought.
Okay.
This semi-obviously, I guess, is the Defenders of Freedom Air Show in Omaha. These are the Thunderbirds. It was quite an experience. You'd be standing there amongst these thousands of people, and then one of the planes, they typically flew 4 together and 1 apart, and they would just come screaming over the horizon and just scare the bejeebers out of you. But there were lots of great photo opportunities. This stretch of brick highway is actually the eastern terminus, I think, of the Lincoln Highway,
Yep.
which is one of the, how many?
Nine
highways?
scenic byways,
Nine
yeah.
scenic byways in the state. This one was actually a lot of production involved in terms of finding guys with these old cars and getting them out there at dawn and everything coming together, but I was really happy with
And
the shot.
that's near Elkhorn.
Yes, it is. Actually, it's just on the outskirts of Elkhorn. This is out in the Sandhills. I think it was east of Arnold, which is a tiny little town out in the middle of the Sandhills, and I like this shot because it just kind of gave you a feel of what it's like out there, and I loved the tails echoing each other and the fact that the foal really couldn't resist turning around and checking me out. This is also in the Sandhills. If you're ever out there, you'll realize how many coal trains go back and forth between Wyoming and Lincoln area and down toward Kansas City, I guess, and wherever else they go. And so I just like the tall grass and the river and the Sandhills behind them.
When you drive through the Sandhills, that's pretty much it. It's you and that train.
Right.
And maybe some cows.
Yeah,
Or
it's-
if you're lucky, a buffalo.
It's amazing how many coal trains there are. I just wonder how big is this hole in Wyoming somewhere. This was at Lake McConaughey. No production at all, just kind of happened to be there when the kayaker was there. This was our travel guide cover 4 years ago. This is at Rock Creek Station, which is down by Fairbury, which is in the south and east part of the state. An old reproduction of a Pony Express operation there. Also, Lake McConaughey, people wouldn't think that there's a lot of open sand in Nebraska, but there you have it. This was, there are opportunities all along the north and south shores of Lake McConaughey for some pretty private camping. So this was one of them. The sandhill cranes, of course, you can't have photos of Nebraska without sandhill cranes, and I particularly like this one because this was about a 10 or 12 second exposure while they were still asleep and the river's flowing past them. So it was amazing to see how they sleep with their heads under their wings or stuck under their backs or whatever. Up by Valentine, which is north central Nebraska, I was actually on my way to photograph Smith Falls that we talked about, I think, earlier, and came over this brow of a hill, and here was the shot. So who am I to say no?
Absolutely. And we look at these with such appreciation. You know, tell us a little bit about what a day in the life of Rick Nibel is like, because, you know, we look at these and think, oh, isn't that nice? But there's a lot of work that goes into this and capturing just the right shot that really represents what it is that you're doing to the fullest. I mean, it's not easy. What we see oftentimes is the only glimpse we're ever going to get at that particular location. Talk to us about your life as a photographer.
Photography, I mean, it's a cliche, but it's true. It's one of those 10% inspiration, 90% perspiration kind of occupations where, you know, some of the shots that I showed you, as I said, like the Elkhorn Highway with the cars on the brick highway, there's a lot of preparation ahead of time, a lot of arrangements to make and scouting to do and time of day to figure out, and other times you just kind of like the mare and foal. You stick your camera out the window and take it. So, you know, it's a lot of, what's makes it satisfying is that to come back and, you know, I may come back with a couple thousand exposures out of which I'm happy to have 30 keepers. but just that's what you need to do to get the right compositions, the right exposures, the right, if there happen to be people in the shot, particularly the right arrangement of the people and sense of action and so forth. So it's there's a lot of pre-production sometimes, and there's a lot of post-production, but being out there and trying to do something like the car hinge shot that we saw, you know, I mean, it's such a Nebraska icon, and it's been photographed God knows how many times. To try and do something different with it is the challenge and the satisfaction.
Now, the pictures obviously tell a story in and of themselves, but there have to be stories behind those stories.
Sure.
Can you think of anything in your travels? You've been doing this an awful long time. Funny story, memorable story, something kind of a behind the scenes of what we see here?
Oh gosh, one of the photographs that I considered including today and didn't was a shot of at Calamus Outfitters. Calamus is a little town out in the middle of the Sandhills, and there's an outfitter company there that been there for a long time. They're doing this ecotourism, to which Sarah referred, and you know, you go out there with a preconceived notion of what you're going to get, what you hope to get. And then we were there several days and got up one morning and it was just totally socked in with fog, and there was this photo of this rancher saddling up his horses for the horseback rides for the day, and just, you know, as I say, I was going to include it, but it got edited out, but it's just a wonderful sense of what his day is like, and that's what you try to capture sometimes, to give a real feel for what you're looking at.
Wow, very good. And Sarah, what about you? I mean, any stories behind the story as you're out and about traveling, people that you've met? You know, we've looked a lot at places, but you showed us the picture of the kids, you know, at the rodeo. This is about people and Nebraskans. Anything that you have that comes to mind?
Yeah, I'm sort of notorious in the division that I work for always having on inappropriate shoes. And Rick's probably maybe has heard this story, but when I first started, I went on a site visit with two of our ag eco people, and we went to a dairy farm, and I had on knee-high, high-heeled black leather boots. And so we get there, and they both have on, you know, like galoshes and tennis shoes.
They're referred to as muck boots for a good reason.
Yeah, and I have on these really like ridiculous shoes, but I made my way through the dairy farm in my boots. And the lady offered me a pair of shoes, but I was gonna make the best of it. And so since then, I always carry a pair of sensible shoes in my car, because I'm not gonna wear sensible shoes during the rest of my life. So, you know, I just try to be prepared, but it's funny things like that happen. And I just remember that the lady at the dairy farm thought I was so silly that I had on these shoes, that I had worn them to a dairy barn. I mean, I just didn't know any better. But learning, and it's really, in those situations, you're really lucky that Nebraskans are so nice, because some people would have just like told me to leave, you know. Yeah. But that's probably a story that people still think is really funny around the office.
Well, let's talk about Nebraska. Oh, did you want to add something?
No, I was just going to say.
Are you just dying to add something over there, Rick?
I hadn't heard it, but I won't have to repeat
it. Yeah, it was pretty funny.
Well, and you have such a great job in that, you know, you are communicating. He's taking the photographs, which communicate a message. You're verbalizing, which communicates a different message. What do you tell people outside of Nebraska? What is your message that truly kind of captures what this state is all about from a PR perspective?
Well, sometimes the images do that better than you can really do in words. Like sometimes I work with international media, and I show them a photograph Rick has taken of, you know, there's one photograph that I've shown a few times of, I think there's some ranchers and it's a snowstorm and they're riding sort of in this snowstorm herding cattle. And it just sort of immediately they're able to understand what they're going to find when they come to Nebraska. Or like an image of a buffalo in the fields of the Sandhills, they understand right away. Or train images. I mean, those types of images are really what we use to sort of show people what Nebraska has. And, you know, I mean, depending on what they're interested in, of course, but, you know, those are some really powerful things that we're able to use.
Well, and working with people internationally, what is their perception before they've actually talked with you, how do they describe
Well,
our state?
they want to go to places that they haven't been before. You know, many international people, they of course have been to New York, they've been to Disney, they've been to California, but they haven't really been to the center of the country. And so they just are kind of like ready to know whatever we can tell them. And so, you know, we tell them about we just tell them all the different things they can do here. And they're always amazed by how affordable it is, how friendly everybody is, and the things that they can do here that they can't do anywhere else.
Okay. And speaking of which, Rick, you could take pictures anywhere else. Obviously, have camera, will travel, and you're good to go. Yeah. Why Nebraska? What drew you to this particular job, and what keeps you doing what you're doing?
Well, I think earlier in my career I was much more of a commercial photographer, and so what appealed to me about this job was the opportunity to go out there and find photographs rather than just create them from scratch. You know, so Nebraska, as we've talked about, is so diverse, and it gives you the opportunity to show places and styles of living that people just don't necessarily associate with it, like be it Toadstool out in the far northwest, or Indian Cave down in the southeast, which looks like North Carolina or New England or something. And so it's just a real challenge to show the diversity of what's out there.
Wonderful. And Sarah, in just the limited time that we have remaining, is there any work in progress in the state right now? Kind of a focal point that years down the road we're going to all kind of be going to that particular
Well,
area?
there's one new attraction that we've gotten a lot of media interest in. It's in North Platte, Golden Spike Tower. And it's a railroad attraction, and there's just so many railroad enthusiasts around the country and around the world. And basically it gives you a bird's eye view of Bailey Yard, which is Union Pacific's world's largest reclassification yard. So just thousands and thousands of trains pass through here every day. And it's a really cool attraction, and we think it has a bright future. So
Okay. We'll be looking for that, and we do have some information to put up for our viewers, so if they want to find out more about what we've discussed today, Nebraska Division of Travel and Tourism, that's www.visitnebraska.gov. What a great interview. This has been fascinating, and I'm sure for our viewers as well. So we appreciate you coming in and sharing your time and expertise with us.
thanks for having us.
And we certainly appreciate all of you for watching. We will see you next week.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at untv.unomaha.edu. If you'd like to share your comments about this show, call UNO TV at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours.
Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Saturday at 6 p.m.